Resident Evil 9 reportedly has the biggest budget and longest development time of any Resident Evil game to date, and it is also said to be the closing chapter to the current arc of the series and will take the series in new directions. Now, it's quite a bit there, because they're clearly putting a lot of work into this game, and it's going to finalize the story that we're currently a part of. What does this mean to you boys? Davey specifically, seeing as you are our Resident Evil expert on the show. What does this lead you to believe?
Biggest budget and longest development time. Now, I read up on this, and apparently this game's been in development since 7. Right? Which is wild to think of if that's the case. I don't know. Now, this is obviously a rumor, right? So take all this with a pinch of salt. This originally came from Dust Golem, who has had some credible leaks in the past. Not saying he's got a 100% hit rate or anything like that, but there are some things with this, right? Closing chapters of the current arc of the series. That's what's kind of getting me at the moment, because I feel like as if Village closed off the Ethan Winters arc pretty well. Now, I mean, you could go into Resident Evil 9 with it being Rose, and it being Rose's story. But personally, I don't know if I really care. Because that last DLC was shit. It really wasn't very good. I don't really know if I want to see, like, 80-year-old Chris. And, you know, we've had confirmation now that Jill just doesn't age from Death Island, right? So maybe it's a chance to get young Jill and an old whippersnapper Chris running about the place. Maybe. I don't know. If it was up to me, what I'd want is I'd want it to go and just be either a Jill-centric story or like a Rebecca Chambers-centric story. And it just go off and we just start forming a new arc. And they could just say, yeah, it's Resident Evil 9, but it's set around the same time as Resident Evil 4 or whatever. I don't think anyone cares. I'm a fucking Metal Gear Solid fan. That timeline's moving all over the place. It's fluid as hell. I wouldn't bat an eyelid at that. So I kind of believe certain parts of this, right? I believe that this could well be the biggest budget and longest development time of any RE, especially if they are halfway through development and then they decide that they're working on a new engine. And they then pivot then to be able to work on that. And it could well be, because Resident Evil generally is made by 2 separate studios, and you've got like the main team who just did Resident Evil 4 Remake, and then the other team who did Resident Evil 3 Remake, right? And generally those are like the 2 major teams, but there is a third team as well that's in the mix. And they've done some of the numbered entries, right? Now, I could see it being a case this was storyboarded and maybe like in the production stage for a long time while they're working on the other projects. And that could be why it's had the longest development time. Budget would be a case if they switched over to new engine. So especially if it was like halfway through project or something like that, that balloons costs like astronomically. And if you think that whoever this team are who are working on the next game that's coming out, and if it's going to be on this new Rex engine, they've got to develop a lot of the tools from scratch. So it's going to take ages. It's going to be expensive. And to be fair, the RE engine is starting to show its age. Here looks dog shit on the RE engine, and it doesn't do ray tracing at all. Like, the ray tracing implementation has been dog shit the last couple of years. So, I believe that part of it. I don't know if I believe that it's the closing chapter to the current arc, because I feel like Village did that really, really well. So, that's where I'm coming down on this. I can believe it. I can believe parts, but not all.
Fair enough, mate. Fair enough. I think quite an informed opinion there. And I respect that. Phil, mate, what are your thoughts? Are you along the same lines as Davey?
Reading this, it just fills me with confidence, actually. So the biggest budget and the longest development time of any Resident Evil game to date. And we can say Resident Evil without taking a shot. Whew! Now, this is what I'd expect. Of course it's going to have the biggest budget, the longest development time. If you think about their recent successes with the remakes of the games, they've made their bank. They know we're hungry for more Resident Evil. And they're going to give it to us in a big way. Now, they're teasing us a little bit because they're saying current arc. Now, is the current arc Ethan Winters? Or is the current arc everything we've seen so far? Now, I'm like Davey. I don't want to see any more Rose. I don't want to go down the route that the movies did. We've given them bloody superpowers and all that stuff. That's a no for me. I've had enough with Rose, with that DLC. Bin her off. Don't want to see any more of her unless they're going to do something special with it. And as much as I'd like to see more Rebecca, especially after watching Vendetta, I think it's going to be based around Leon. I really do. He's the biggest character. He's the most popular character. He's the main character in Resident Evil, in my books. And I think, unfortunately, guys, this is where we'll see Leon die in this game. We haven't seen him since 6, I think, is the last time we've seen him, apart from the movies. I don't know if they're fully canon. He wasn't in 7, he wasn't in 8, and I want to see what he's been up to during that time. Of course, we've seen Chris, he's dipped in and out, but I think it's an obvious one, especially off the success of Resident Evil 4, to go in hard here with Leon and end with him dying, and that would finish our arc with the current set of characters that we have for Resident Evil. And then when we get to 10, it's brand new, completely brand new. It's almost like Marvel wiping the slate clean and starting again. This is what we'll get with Resident Evil.
Wow, that's a lot. And I tell you what, I don't disagree with you. I actually don't. I don't think it's a Leon game. I won't say it's a Leon game. But I think you might be right in that we're about to lose some loved characters. Just because, like we said, Chris is like 80. Chris is going to be going soon. Especially if he's still going out on missions. Fellow needs glasses now. Bless him. He's got a shaky hand with his... Wild. And I think all those characters need to have aged. So I think this could be, like you're saying, it's not necessarily closing the Winters arc, but closing the arc we have, unless, like you said, Davey, where they start just zipping the timeline freaking wherever it wants to go. But I think this is the end of the Winters arc. And I think you're going to be... I'd like it to maybe be Rose as the villain, and you play as whoever. That'd be quite cool. She's probably powerful enough to do it. So that'd be quite sick. But I didn't play Shadows of Rose, so I'm not too sure what she could do. But that's what I'd like to see. The fact that it's the biggest budget and longest development time, completely believe. 100% believe it. Because, I mean, how long have they been working on this REX engine? We don't even know. This might have been planned for ages. 100% I believe that. And I think that's going to stay a constant, where each game's going to be like this, where it's bigger and better than the last. But yeah, kind of agreeing with both of you. Definitely agreeing with the budget and time. But the actual plot of what the game could be, it's a bit up in the air, isn't it?
I mean, just to jump in here, to piggyback on what both you guys have said, the only thing right about the budget, I wouldn't say that's necessarily a good thing. I've just Googled this now, just to double check myself. I knew it was a big jump. I didn't know how big. The jump, right, RE5 cost 19 million to make. RE6 cost 100 million to make. 100 million. Like fucking insane. Yeah, proper Dr. Evil moment. $100 million. And it was shit. It was gash, right? Like, no one was happy about it when it came out. Like, a lot of people now are talking back and they're like, RE6 is great. My YouTube comments are like 90% people defending RE6, like as if it's the best fucking thing. No, that's because you were fucking young enough to play it as your first RE and you thought it was fucking great. No, it was terrible. It was fucking terrible. We were only joking on the last fucking video we're putting out on my channel about how many vehicles Leon crashes in one game. It was like every single vehicle known to man, he crashes. He probably crashed a fucking forklift truck in the background that we didn't see. Wild. So I don't think the budget necessarily always like translates to quality. It definitely doesn't. So I wouldn't really take too much stock in that as being like a moment of success. You'd hope that it would be a case that it's put in the right places, but it's not necessarily a degree of quality, right? That's just something to say. In terms of them killing off the Resident Evil characters and wiping the slate clean, I think that'd be a fucking huge mistake. Resident Evil, like, for as much as a horror franchise, It's like Uncharted in that no one dies. Literally no one dies from the core cast, ever. Like, think about it. Any Resident Evil game you can think of, they get out. The people that die are the people that go alongside you or the characters that are introduced in that game. I'm thinking through the entire franchise now. No one has died yet from the core. Even Barry's fine. Literally no one dies.
Just going off your budget claims there, Davey, that money doesn't always equal quality. I've just been doing a little Googling, and let's look at Spider-Man 2. £210 million. Let's look at God of War Ragnarok. £200 million. Let's look at The Last of Us 2. £220 million. Forbidden West. £212 million. It takes a lot of money now to build something that will impress on the PS5. It needs to be at a certain level, and this is what we're expecting when we say AAA. We might even add another A on for these types of games because they live within our 9s and our 10s when we're rating them. And their budgets are huge, and they're huge for a reason, because we expect such quality. Now, hearing that they're going to be putting a big budget into this, it doesn't remind me of the RE6 that you've gone through there, Davey. It just fills me with confidence because that's what they need to do, in my opinion. If they started to cheap out at this point, I'd be like, well, let's have another Revelations from you, rather than let's have Resident Evil 9.
I get that, and that makes sense. That makes sense. I mean, the cost this generation to be able to make games is nuts, and especially if they are moving on to a new engine, as we said, that is going to inflate the cost. So it all makes sense, right? And you'd expect it to kind of get bigger and better. The only thing is, you've got to remember that with Resident Evil, there is an upper limit. It is a survival horror, or it should be a survival horror game. So if they sell 20 million, they've done fucking amazing numbers, right? They can't be like Rockstar with GTA 6 and they're like, yeah, we spent like 500 million or a billion on this, and they know they're going to make that back because it doesn't matter, because they're going to sell like 80 odd million units. Resi's never going to hit that, like, ever. It's always going to be like capped at a certain amount. So that's the only thing. I mean, like, and for as many examples of good development costs that cost a lot, you've got just as much on the other side. Cyberpunk 400 million. It's like, it's not always a guarantee. And that's, even though I'm being a bit more on the dubious side, I think your positive stance is probably the more likely one, because Capcom just haven't been missing when it comes to the series for, well, fucking since RE6.
You're the biggest advocate I know for Resident Evil. You love it. You've built a whole YouTube community around this video game. And you're telling me now that your confidence isn't at an all-time high for where Capcom is going with these games. And RE4, the most popular of all time, it only just came out as the best horror game of all time from IGN. It's the most popular horror game of all time. And you're saying that Resident Evil as an IP now has a cap. With the amount of movies that come out, the Netflix series, the CGI stuff that we're watching at the moment, you're saying survival horror is still dragging Resident Evil down? I'm not sure I fully agree with that. Now, I haven't got the analytics here. I haven't got the stats and the profit in front of me. But the way I'm seeing it, it's just getting bigger and better every single time. Now, maybe not the movies, but the games, for sure.
I think you're definitely onto something in terms of like Capcom's quality control. They've been really knocking it out of the park. And, you think what it was like when you moved from like the original trilogy in Code Veronica, and they went into 4, they went into 5, they went into 6, and it was kind of like, fuck. Like every time it was like, oh, I wish they'd done it. I wish they'd done that. Whereas since 7, you and me in particular, Phil, because we've been following it for that long, have been like, wow, I love what they've done here. I love the way they've done this. I love the way they've done that. And they've kind of doubled down into the horror aspect of it, which brings back all the old school fans and then will capture new ones, right? And especially in this age of streaming and things like that, you know, you get all these kind of bigger content creators who like kind of built their fan bases on horror and stuff, and they're able to market it. But I think even though it's like a really recognizable brand, right, and they probably make shitloads more in merchandise than they ever do in game sales for Resident Evil, it ain't a COD. It ain't a FIFA. It's not. It's not. And even though it's the biggest one, it's the biggest dick in the survival horror like whole market, Resi would never think about competing with like a FIFA or a COD, or it would never release around there because it knows it would get washed. And, you know, it's not even Capcom's biggest IP. That's Monster Hunter. So it's not, it ain't there. Like, as much as it's gaining in popularity, if it ships 25 mil, that's fucking monumental, right? That's huge. But a lot of these other games, like COD ships more than 25 mil every single year. You know, FIFA ships more than that every single year. GTA, whenever it decides to release, will be like 90 to 100 mil units, you know? So there's got to be a limit somewhere for it where the budget cannot sustain the amount of games. And I always think about like EA when they were touting off Dead Space back in the day. They put a lot of money into that series, but they wanted them returns of 7 million. And it just wasn't happening. Like, there just wasn't enough players that were interested in the genre to be able to get it. And that's what killed that franchise eventually. So you got to have a top limit there somewhere. Definitely.
I agree it's somewhere, but I don't think they've hit it yet. And I don't agree with you saying that they've got there. I think there's still a bright future for the series. And of course, I'm a lover of the IP, and I'll back it all the way until it does die. Maybe this is the end of the arc because it kills off the series, and as you're saying, they plummet all their money into it, and it doesn't sell where they would need it to be. But do you think the people in the boardroom, the managers, the directors, the people behind the computers that know the analytics and know the big amounts that they're making at the moment, do you think they're saying, "Oof, I'd hold off on this one because there's a cap here and we might hit it soon"? No, they're going to push forward. They're putting this into 5th and 6th gear, and they're going to move forward with this in a big way. That's what I believe. How about you, Spence? You've been pretty quiet on this bit.
Sure, I think all that budget is completely fine to spend. Whereas usually, like you're saying, Davey, it makes a lot of sense where you need returns. And if you're spending too much money, you're just not going to get it. I don't think they care about that as much with this one, because most of it is going towards working and getting used to this new engine, which is the engine they are going to use for every release for the probably 10 years after this game. So they probably don't really care how much they're going to spend on this title, as it's probably going to be their first game in that new engine. So that's what I think the budget is. I think it's just getting to grips with this new thing.
Do you think this is going to be on the new engine? Because the new engine, there's a hint there, isn't there? With the X. This is the next engine with the X. Now, we're only on Resident Evil 9. Now, my Roman numerals aren't up to full scratch, but a 9 isn't an X. I think the X is 10. So I would go out on a limb and say, this is the end of where we're going currently with Resident Evil at 9. And then 10 is your rework of everything, because you're on a new engine, you're going to get new characters, a new storyline. Now, that makes sense to me. I don't know about yourself, Davey.
I would be shocked if they put another game out in this engine. Because RE4, as good as it looks, it ain't wowing anyone. It really isn't. There wasn't a moment in that game that I thought, oh, wow. Like, Callisto made it look like shit, right? The game was obviously way better than Callisto. Like, it really was. And it didn't look bad, but it wasn't impressive. Like, the start of the generation when we saw Village, it was like, whoa. Fuck, this looks great. A few more years down the line, everyone else has leveled right up, and they're still stuck at that being the peak. I can't see them, unless this comes out, like, next year, early. Like, say that's the game, the rumoured game, right? And it comes out in March or whatever. Say it is. Okay, I can see that still being in the same RE engine, and I wouldn't bat an eyelid at it. But if you go in any later than that, if you're getting towards, like, I don't know, like October, spooky season or something like that, and they decide to release it, no way. That hair looks gash. It just doesn't look like it. It should do, and it's not bad. But another year from now, when you've had like all these other big hitters that are coming out next year, it will really look tired. It will really look tired. So I think it's got to be a new engine now at this point for the next mainline entry. Maybe like a CV remake or something. You could do that in the RE engine, and I think everyone will be fine, because you just compare that to how a PS2 looks, and you'd be like, fucking hell, looks insane, right? It carries a lot. But brand new environments, brand new things, it's got a wow. And like, yeah, I don't know. I can't see it, man.
I was playing slight bit of devil's advocate there, just to put the cat amongst the pigeons and see what your rebuttal would be on that one. But I completely agree with you. If I want a new game and it's got this massive budget, I want it on a new setup here. I want it on the newest engine. And as you were saying, I would love them to go back and do some more remakes. I just want more Resident Evil. I'm so glad we can say it at this part of the show. And if they want to do it in this current RE engine and bring us, you know, Veronica, any of the Revelation games, I'm eating up.
Outbreak. That's all we want. That's all anyone wants. Let's just give us Outbreak in the new engine sound. Call it a day. You don't even have to do any more mainlines then. Just keep making Outbreaks. I'd be happy with that. Basically mainline games you can play with your mates. Great time.